Alright, so we're back. I'm going to do a video about residential zoning and I guess the effect that it can have on a city. So generally, zoning law was first adopted in the US in like the 1920s. There was this big Supreme Court case ruling that allowed municipalities to decide what kind of buildings or uses can be allowed in certain parts of a city. So here in Tallahassee, I've got Zillow pulled up here with this setting to only show where apartments and townhomes are for sale. And so you can see they're kind of like all over the place, and they aren't really centered in any specific area. And actually, they're large. So right in the center here, this intersection where my mouse is basically the center of Tallahassee. Really, downtown is kind of south of that, but not very far. And so you can see actually around this area there are very little apartments and townhouses for sale, and they're actually kind of concentrated out here on the east side, extending south, and also kind of on the west-south side and northwest side up by the highway. And the reason for this is that Tallahassee is an older town for Florida, and at one point it was a very small town. For quite a while it was a very small town. It's only kind of in the 1900s that it took off. And so you have all these old neighborhoods that are residential, kind of near downtown, and they're generally single family homes. Let me just kind of show you an example. I've done this in some of my other videos. Here's a neighborhood that is pretty close to downtown, and it looks extremely residential, right? So like there's no sign that you're anywhere near downtown here. It looks like suburban America, even though you're really only like 5 minutes from downtown. There's no bus stops, there's no shopping, it's just suburbia, right? And it's kind of this way, very close to downtown in almost every direction, I think. I mean, there are parts of Tallahassee I haven't been to, but certainly like over here in Levy Park, which I've shown in another video, it's also residential. And you don't see any townhouses, you don't see any apartments, right? And so like I was talking about before, zoning law was adopted in I think the 1920s, maybe 1921, and it allows towns to dictate what can be built where. So here I've got Tallahassee's webpage pulled up. This is the zoning and rezoning information page, and you can see they've got all of these zoning codes and titles for basically labeling these codes, and each one of these has specific allowed uses for that area. Okay, so here is the commercial parkway. I don't know exactly where that is. I'm going to pull up a map in a second, but you've got like maybe 50 different zones. You've got residential preservation 1, residential preservation 2, and I did look at 1 and 2 and figure out what those are. 1, you can build detached homes only, like only single family homes, no apartments, no townhouses. 2, you can build duplexes and maybe townhouses. I'm not 100% sure. I think it might just be duplexes, but don't hold me to that. And so now let me just pull up the map. This is a map that Tallahassee has that shows basically how the land use is assigned over any specific geographic part of Tallahassee. So if you want to build something somewhere, you got to look at this map and see if Tallahassee will allow you to build that kind of building or run that kind of business, right? And first thing you notice is that there's a ton of different allocations. You know, this is not simple. The whole town is chopped up into sometimes really tiny and specific land uses. Like, look, only this tiny area of like, what is it, maybe 12 lots is residential 4, but then right across the street is OR1, and I don't know exactly what all these allow, but you can see it's very nitpicky exactly how they've done it. And by doing this, they've kind of assumed to know, or they're kind of presuming that they know exactly how all this land should be used. And I'm sure they're just basing off of what's there already, but it kind of serves to um, stay off change, you know, prevent the city from growing organically and changing over time because you have these legal barriers that prevent parts of Tallahassee from growing the way they would organically, right? So, like I was talking about before, you have all these residential neighborhoods right next to downtown. Here you can see downtown, right? And just next door is a residential preservation 2 district, which again, I think only allows duplexes, so you can't have apartments buildings there, which doesn't make any sense because you're right next to downtown. You're right next to all the jobs, right? So you want people to be able to live close to work, have low transportation costs, but instead you're creating an expensive residential district um, and kind of just preventing these areas from changing over time and growing to accommodate the changing needs of the city. And so you see even more of this residential preservation district. These houses in here are very expensive, and part of that is just because the land is valuable. It's not necessarily that the houses are nice or that they're big. It's just because the land is so close to downtown, the prices are being driven up by the fact that the land is valuable. It's very proximate to everything you would want to do, and a lot of people want to live here because of that, but the supply of housing is kind of artificially constrained by this residential preservation 2 assignment. And so here you have a planned urban development district, PUD, and it's for this Trinity Catholic school. I don't know what that's going to allow in the future, but you can see that let's just make an assumption that this is some kind of future commercial development they're going to allow if the school ever goes out of business or whatever, right? Why limit it to just this one area? They're saying, okay, you can, like, maybe in the future we can build here, but you know, you can't build anything across the street. You can't have a gas station on the corner. You can't have a convenience store on the corner. You can't have a liquor store on the corner. You can't have any kind of business that would make it easier for people in this neighborhood to walk to without having to drive in their car to the nearest Publix or whatever and get on a major artery. So, you know, by forcing entire areas to be completely residential, you're increasing the amount of trips that people are going to have to make in their car because you're pushing businesses out to the fringes of these areas. Yeah, so back to the Zillow map, you see that the effect of this is that you have apartments kind of spread out all over the place instead of near the areas with the most jobs. And you kind of have like this reverse city where denser development is occurring in the suburbs and less dense single family housing is concentrated near downtown because that's where it historically was. Alright, so this has been a little bit of a rant just about zoning use in Tallahassee. You know, I'm doing things specific to Tallahassee because it's what I know about, but these kind of issues are occurring all over the country, especially in, I don't know that it's occurring especially anywhere. It's kind of a nationwide problem. I think the only city in the U.S. that does not have zoning at all is Houston, and maybe one day I'll make a video just about that. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and give me a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe, check out my other videos. Take it easy.